Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Lettermen Row. I'm Spencer Holbrook. That's Mick Walker. I have made my triumphant return to Columbus, Ohio after spending a few days out in Las Vegas, Nevada. If I look tired, well, that's because I was in Las Vegas, Nevada for 3 nights and I didn't get a lot of sleep. The Buckeyes did because they were in and out one night in Vegas, then they flew back, then they had workouts the next morning. Pretty business as usual business trip for Ohio State out to Las Vegas. Mick didn't make the trip. He stayed back home to tend to all of the things recruiting. We're going to talk right now, though, about what we didn't learn out of Big Ten Media Days because, Mick, there's so much that we did learn. There's so many things that have already been said about this. If you go to lettermenrow.com, you can read all of the content that I wrote, that Austin Ward wrote, that Jeremy Birmingham wrote out in Las Vegas, and that we continue to write from the fallout from Las Vegas. But we are here because training camp starts in 6 days. It is insane to think about that. Training camp starts July 31st for Ohio State next Thursday, and there's still a lot to learn. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing good. Like you said, I was just sitting here back at home, getting work done on the recruiting side, but I was watching it. You and I talked about it a little before. I do hope that it kind of returns to Indy. It feels weird that we got like coaches press conferences going off at like 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. and like in the Eastern time zone when many of the schools are out in this way or out in the Central time zone. And I imagine that kind of makes it weird for you. It makes it weird for people trying to find the information because now Spencer's writing stories at 9, 10 o'clock at night, even though it's 5, 6 o'clock out there. It just makes things a little bit awkward for the actual content side of things. But like Spencer said, he crushed it. Austin crushed it. Byrne crushed it. And we'll have more coming out of it. But still, it was fun to hear from Ryan Day, fun to hear from Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Jeremiah Smith. I wasn't there. I was listening to all of it. But I'll ask you, Spencer, what did you want to learn that you didn't learn throughout all of this?
Well, I'm glad that James Franklin spoke up and said that it was dumb that it was in Las Vegas. Look, I loved the trip. It's my first time there, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've already told my wife that we're going to go back out there. I thought it was a good time. It made no sense. There was zero juice in that building. Ohio State brought a little bit of juice because they had the best player on defense in college football. They had the best player on offense in college football, and they're the reigning national champions. Day 2 was the most dead I've ever seen a Big Ten Media Days day, and the pictures I saw from yesterday when I was flying back and didn't go in there bore out the same result. The SEC did their media day in the Eastern time zone because they're an Eastern and Central time zone conference, and they dominated the news cycle. From 8 a.m. until 8 p.m., you had storylines because that's when people were talking. Well, the Big Ten Media Days didn't even start until 3 p.m. on the East Coast. It was noon out there in Las Vegas. Well, that shortens your media window altogether. By the time Sharon Moore spoke yesterday at 3:30 to 4:15, almost everybody was at Harry Reid International Airport getting on their flights to go back to where they're supposed to be in Big Ten country. Nobody cared what Sharon Moore had to say. And the end of the Big Ten Media Days was the juicelessest thing I've ever seen. There was nobody cared and nobody had any time for it because it was a Thursday night at 7:30 out here on the East Coast. I thought it was the dumbest thing the Big Ten has ever done. And I'm not complaining that I got a trip to Las Vegas, and I will never complain at anywhere they send me. I would go to the Serengeti to cover Ohio State. Like, that's just the way that it is. I'd go to Tibet. Okay.
Frankfurt, Germany.
Well, yeah, that's where the Wolverine is going to go from Michigan over there. The folks that cover Michigan for On 3 will end up in Germany next year to cover that game. What a weird thing that is. I wanted to get that out there first, Mick. This is not necessary. It needs to be somewhere where the Big Ten can actually show off that it's the Big Ten. It missed the mark. I hope they move it back somewhere where the Big Ten can be represented. I love seeing fans out there clamoring for autographs that they're not going to get. I love seeing people walk around in their Indiana shirts and their Illinois and Rutgers shirts around Big Ten Media Days, just trying to get a glimpse of some of their players. There was none of that. Jeremiah Smith goes, unnoticed in the casino in Las Vegas. Nico Iamaleava was just walking around the Mandalay Bay, hanging out. And I think one person recognized him. It was like, oh, that's the quarterback from, he just transferred from, oh, man, what's his name? And I was like, this is embarrassing. This is supposed to be a showcase of the league. And it just wasn't. And there was a smaller media presence there. James Franklin ripped the Big Ten because a lot of the Penn State beat writers couldn't come, and I feel for them. We almost couldn't make the trip, if I'm being completely honest. I worked it in. So that is just, if they want to dominate news cycles the way that the SEC does, they can't have it in Las Vegas, and they certainly can't have it in Los Angeles. It just can't happen. Now, for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think Tony Patini even said that in the beginning. He was kind of just like, yeah, we thankful that we're out here, thankful we're doing this, but we'll be back in Indy. This was a one-time thing. And even my wife, who was watching the Ryan Day's press conference, just sitting on the couch, she just looked at it and was like, do they have all the lights on in there? Like it just, the whole area just kind of looked like dark and dingy from the TV broadcast. And that's just, but I mean, maybe that's just at Lucas Oil, they have it all set up. They know exactly what they want to do. Like it's so bright because of the football stadium. Like it looks like every time you walk in there, it's like, this is the beginning of a new season. And just kind of, it's like Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas, it just kind of felt like, hey, we need to get this going and we'll get this out of the way. But again, moving on.
It also perfectly bookends the Big Ten. Like you start the season at Media Days, talking season in Indianapolis. And then in December, somebody lifts the trophy in Indianapolis. It just makes too much sense. But anyway, whatever. I hope that they move it back somewhere. We'll talk about that later. Ohio State, a lot learned. I have so many takeaways. We've got 4 takeaways from Ryan Day over at LettermenRow.com. We've got a tone-setting story. Ryan Day really set the tone for the season by saying that they're not defending anything. They're attacking. They're not defending national champions. They can't get that trophy taken away. They're just set on attacking this season. I loved that from Ryan Day. Heard a lot from Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs and a lot from Sonny Styles that I really haven't even cracked into yet that we're going to get into over the next week at LettermenRow.com. But Mick, you listened to everything. I've got my answers set. We did not talk about this before. Everything that we did learn about this team. What didn't we learn?
I mean, the obvious answer is the starting quarterback, right? Like you can just kind of expand that to any starting position. Like we didn't learn about who's going to be the starting left and right tackle. Like you hear some Austin Sehfereld reassurances, which is what we've heard all offseason. You hear Ethan Onyanwa gets due to the week, or he gets due to the week, I believe, not Iron Buckeye. That's a later honor that will come from Mickey Marotti and Ryan Day. But none of these starting positions, whether it's that or even, what's going to happen in the secondary, you just didn't find out about any position battles. And I don't think anybody was fully expecting to. But it just didn't even feel like you really were able to glean much from any of it because it was mainly big picture stuff about what you got with a new staff or following expectations after a national championship. It's just stuff that really he's the only coach in the building that can be asked questions about that. So he got all those types of questions.
Yeah. Ryan Day was talking so much about roster building and NIL. And what I didn't learn is any sort of guidance on what the future of this thing looks like. That's my first thing. Like Ryan Day's like, hey, there's a lot of gray area. We have no clue what to do right now. And I think everybody agrees. They just want some clarity, man. Can they have collectives? Can they not? Can they pay guys the way Texas Tech wants to? Or do they have to go through the CSC on everything? Does the CSC have any sort of weight? We don't know. There was just a new presidential executive order signed by the Trump administration yesterday. No clue what it means for anything. It shouldn't change anything until it should. And there's no enforcement arm there. There's still questions on the enforcement of the CSC. It's obvious from guys like Ryan Day and Dan Lanning who spoke about it as well, that there's a lot of gray area and there's not a lot of folks around the sphere who can, not the Vegas sphere, just like the college football sphere, who can answer these questions for these coaches. They're just kind of left out to dry. Like, okay, well, you got to play by these rules. And it's almost like, well, what rules? Because this person's saying this thing and this legal case says this thing. And the collectives are still here, except they're in-house now. And can they operate the way that they used to, or can they not? We have no clue. And it's clear that it's really bothering some of these high-end coaches who are trying to build rosters the right way. And it's really bothering a lot of people around. And I think that's one thing we didn't learn is, are we going to get any clarity on any of this? The answer is no.
Yeah, and I think Berm kind of encapsulated that, especially when the recruiting side of things yesterday on a story for Lettermen Row. He spoke with Ross Bork out there in Vegas and just tried to get as much information as he could, or at least gave Ross the opportunity to kind of just clear up the standing of where things are, because I think there are a lot of people, and again, I don't fault Pete Nakos of Rivals or On3, and I don't fault Ross Dellinger of Yahoo or any of these guys that are breaking news about this, because they're just reporting the news as it is given to them. But a lot of this stuff is, oh, this change is happening. You see the Ohio State fan base go, oh, no, we suck again. Or, okay, this change happens. Oh, no, we're going to go back to being at the top again. And I don't think Ryan Day, Ross Bjork, any of them feel like they can just operate that way when it comes to just that sliding scale of moving things up and down. Because, like you said, there is no clarity. But yeah, there was not much to be learned there. That's definitely the biggest picture thing. I think even like hearing whether it's Tony Batiti talk on like the Big Ten Network or hearing some of these other coaches' interviews. And obviously some like Brett Bielema doesn't have to deal with the problems of recruiting now. Ryan Day does when it comes to the money that he's got to spend, but he still has to handle whether it's people trying to poach Luke Altmaier, their quarterback, or if people are trying to poach Damon Williams from Jetfish at Washington. Like, I think all coaches want clarity on this. They want some kind of guidance, and that was a big theme, but nobody really had any answers. Even Ryan Day, you would think he's at the top of the sport right now. He's the head coach in the Big Ten, and he didn't have answers. James Franklin didn't have answers. Like, nobody did.
Well, and even Ryan Day's athletic director helped put all this stuff together. And it's still like, well, there's a lot of gray area. How does this happen? Whatever. Like, that's another thing. If fans don't care, I'm sorry for going off about it. It's just like they don't know how to go forward. Nobody does. The only team that seems to know how to go forward is Texas Tech, because they're either going to play within the rules or they're going to pay people $1 billion in oil money to play for them. Like, and Texas seems to have it figured out too. Maybe it's something in the oil down there. Maybe if we just find a massive oil field in Northwest Ohio and Hardin County, specifically on the Holbrook property, that would be better for everybody involved. I don't know. We'll see. What we didn't learn about Ohio State, Mick, I think I asked Ryan Day specifically about defensive tackles. We know Edric Houston and Caden McDonald are going to be the starters. So that's just kind of set. But I asked Ryan Day if heading into summer or training camp after watching this program work in the summer, if he feels better about his defensive tackle situation. He said, well, there's no clear upgrades for us. So we're playing with what we have. We have to develop these guys. The one guy he did mention was Will Smith Jr. He really likes what he's seen from him, and I think that's a big development, especially because Sonny Styles mentioned Will Smith Jr. as well. But we're in wait-and-see mode because they haven't played a lot of football. Jason Moore and Tywone Malone, Austin Ward wrote last week for LettermenRow.com. He really likes what he's seeing from Tywone Malone and what he's hearing about Tywone Malone. Jason Moore continues to look like the most NFL-like defensive tackle in the room, and it's just going to have to click at some point or it won't. Will Smith Jr. has never played a meaningful snap for Ohio State, but he appears to be pushing for a role. We still have no clue what this defensive tackle depth is going to be, and that is a little unsettling, and I think in the next month you're going to have to learn something. So on August 25th, when you enter the week of the Texas game, you have a better idea of what you have at defensive tackle than you do right now on Friday, July 25th, exiting Big Ten Media Days. I think they're encouraged by the progress from the summer, but you just don't know until you get on the field in practice, and you especially don't know until you see those 4 new starters along the offensive line that are wearing burnt orange and white in the horseshoe on August 30th.
Yeah, going back to our word from earlier, clarity. Like I don't really know where to fall. Like you and I in the summer when we were at June camps, and it's Jarquez Carter, the freshman defensive tackle, like he's looking good. That's what sources around the staff or on the building or whatever you want to say. Like that's what people are telling us. Jarquez Carter, he's going to play a role for us. We can fast forward a couple more weeks. Austin goes to the Cardell Jones softball charity game. He talks to Tywone Malone, sizes Tywone Malone up, and it goes, oh, you know what? Maybe Tywone Malone can kind of push for a role for us. And then you guys get to Vegas, and it's like, who's pushing for a role? Will Smith Jr. So I don't know if we're expecting something from all 3 of these guys. If there's a lacking of consistency, what was it? I think it was a mixed bag of the negative was a reference for the quarterbacks. But is that what it is? Is it just Tywone Malone was better this one week and Jarquez Barkley? Like I don't know if the 3 names coming out is a good thing or if it's just once again showing the lack of like true separation, and we're just looking at Caden McDonald and Edric Houston dominating in between the defensive tackle spots. I truly don't know, but I want to come out of Vegas or Las Vegas and Big Ten Media Days feeling encouraged that we have another potential name that has gotten some buzz.
Yeah, and you can at least feel encouraged by that. That's fine. Because like you said, each of these guys have taken their turn this offseason, generating a little bit of publicity for themselves. And so maybe they're all coming along in a way that makes this a really good unit. Or maybe they're not. So we don't know. And Ryan Day said as much, like they have to play football before we truly know. The other thing is the running back position. I wrote about it on Friday at LettermenRow.com. Ryan Day said that he's really high on this running back room. He said the confidence is very high, but they've got to go do it. You don't hit a lot if you're a running back in practice, especially in the spring. Ohio State did that anyway. Training camp, you don't usually hit with the running backs. Ohio State's planning to put those guys in live situations to see what they've got. We know what C.J. Donaldson is. We don't really know what James Peoples is, even if we expect him to be a star. So, and I think Ryan Day kind of tempered expectations for Bo Jackson a little bit, said that he could play. but you were going to have to see how he does. It's always easy, and I think back to a guy like Jelani Thurman, not to pick on Jelani, but it's always easy to have a freshman come in the spring and not know the playbook, but just be out there playing ball. And you're like, oh, that guy gets open. Oh, he catches things. Oh, he looks like a potential superstar. And then by the fall, it's like, okay, we have to install a game plan. And what are we doing with this guy? Probably nothing. I feel that a little bit with Bo Jackson, where in the spring he was super impressive. Hey, here's the football, make a cut and go. Now you have to play pass protection. Now you have to understand the entire playbook. Now you have to know when you need to flex out and be in the slot. Now you have to be able to catch the football and do everything that comes with that. Not that easy. So the guys who were making a push in the spring as true freshmen, you start to find out who's real and who's not. Like a Devin Sanchez, I think, is probably going to be real. But if you told me that Bo Jackson kind of eased into it a little bit more, I would believe you, because the spring isn't real life. And so it's a good frame of reference to start with, but it doesn't always match what we're going to see in the fall. And so this running back room, I feel good about, just like Ryan Day. But if Ryan Day's saying, but we still need to see it from a James Peoples, from a cut down CJ Donaldson, from Sam Williams-Dixon, who's kind of a first-year player because of the injuries that he went through in the time that he spent away from the program, like, you still kind of consider him pretty green. And then you've got, Turbo Rogers, who's never had an Ohio State practice in his life, and Isaiah West, who's coming off an injury that kept him out for a lot of the spring, even though they're excited about him. Like, super green room. They still need to see what's going on in this running back room on the field before they say definitively, yes, it's going to be great. But Ryan Day said that it has a potential to be special. So we still don't know for sure what we're going to get out of these tailbacks, but you should feel good about them regardless.
Yeah, I think potential is probably the best way to couch it. Like, that's why Ryan Day said that. He's very intentional with what he says. Like, James Hubel posted a picture of himself on, Friday morning, and it took the Ohio State Twitter sphere by storm. His biceps look like they're about as wide as my neck. Like, he just has huge arms. He obviously has put on good muscle since arriving in Columbus. Like, he's fully expected to be the number one running back from you and I think even some inside the building, even though nobody's ever said anything that James Peoples is going to be our number one guy. I think that's kind of the expectation when they take on Texas. So I'm excited to see that. I was told by at least one person multiple times this summer that if they could get another year out of CJ Donaldson, they would love to have him, like, beyond just this year, because they like what they've seen so far. So I think that's encouraging. But then, like you said, we hear a lot about different freshmen or early enrollees or maybe even young guys in the summer or in June when we're at these camps, just because coaches are talking and we have time to talk with people around the building. But Bo Jackson doesn't get a lot of that buzz because at that point pads are off. Now it's just consistency. Are we going through maybe we're going through film room, maybe we're going through different stuff, and they're just trying to put stuff together. And like you said, when it comes down to it, it's 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 8, and you got Texas runs a twist on August 30th, and Anthony Hill's coming right through the A gap, and it's mano a mano, Bo Jackson versus Anthony Hill. Is that the situation you really want to be in? I don't think that's what Ohio State wants to be in right now, and that's perfectly fine because you don't have to be in that situation yet. But that is certainly one thing that was interesting to kind of just hear Ryan Day talk about, is that running back room.
Yeah, well, now that I'm thinking about it, Anthony Hill, I think is one of the 5 best linebackers in the country. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Because that's one thing we did not – we learned – that's one thing we learned a lot about, and I think you even mentioned it, was this linebacker room with Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, but also Ryan Day, through different interviews, continued to bring up Riley Pettijohn, TJ Alford, Peyton Pierce, like this whole top to bottom. It just seems like Ryan Day is a big believer in what James Laurinaitis has going in that top 5.
Yeah, so oddly enough, just because I was so intrigued by what he had to say, Jeremiah was getting a lot of questions about himself. Caleb was getting a lot of questions about superstardom, like those two, and rightfully so. Like, I understand that. So I spent the entire 40 minutes of player interviews talking to Sonny Styles. Talked to him about linebacker and Arvell Reese. He's very excited for that. He thinks Arvell has a chance to be really special. Talked to him about Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford, and he is very excited about those guys. Sonny's a guy who played as a true freshman. By the way, he was a reclass, so he was supposed to be a senior in high school, and he's out there playing in the Georgia game. Back in the 2022 Peach Bowl. It's just remarkable defending Darnell Washington the way he did before Darnell got hurt. Sonny knows what it takes to play really early in your career and to play very early in your life. And so I wanted his take on TJ and Riley. And it got me thinking, as much as we love Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, I think Peyton Pierce deserves to be in that category as well by what we've heard from him. I don't know the rest of the linebacker room, like, is it as deep as it needs to be? And you're only playing 2 linebackers, and I get that. And if you have to, like, I'm sure CJ Hicks can do some linebacker stuff. But we anticipate Arvo Reese to do a little bit of stuff off the edge. Sonny Styles can do that kind of stuff. If they need another linebacker to step up, whether it be for injury or lack of a pass rush moves the guy to defensive end, or they have to do some creative stuff in the secondary with the athletes that they have, like, is Garrett Stover ready to play? Are TJ and Riley really as ready as we think they are? Or were they kind of that spring mirage that we see from some of these freshmen? And again, the spring mirage is not a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is, and the way that these guys progress. I'm curious as to what this linebacker room truly looks like. We love what we see at the top from these Ohio State linebackers. But the depth piece is interesting because it's Garrett Stover and then 3 freshmen beyond those top 3. So I'm curious as to that. It's almost kind of just every level of the defense thing, because we question the safety depth too. I don't know if it's great where it should be, because you've got a freshman like Fahim Delane, you've got a guy like Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain. Whoever doesn't start is a depth piece, and what does that mean if they don't start? And then you've got a couple other guys in there, but they don't really seem to be on the trail to make an impact. So just defensive depth, I guess, is something that we didn't learn a lot about, even though we talked a lot of defense out there, that I'm curious about.
Yeah, like the whole defense, it's going to just be fascinating. August 30th when the ball gets kicked off, and you got Steve Sarkisian crouched down or whatever he's doing, maybe falling face first because Cherion Henderson just went 70 yards to the house. I don't know what he's going to be doing on the sideline, but whatever. You're going to have Steve Sarkisian across the field drawing up plays. Like, what does that defense look when Matt Patricia's got to have a stop on 3rd down until they get the ball back to the offense? Or who's going to be out there when they really need a pass rush situation? Is it Kenyatta Jackson or Bo Atkinson? Obviously, I think Kenyatta was a big winner of the week in Las Vegas just because he seemed like he was drawing praise at every opportunity that whether it was Ryan Day or Sonny Styles kind of had. But, like, what do those look like? Is Arvell up on the line of scrimmage? Is Sonny up on the line of scrimmage? Like, I'm just fascinated to see, like you said, that's where that linebacker depth, that safety depth, all those different type of depths, when you start wanting to move guys around, that's where it comes in. The one spot where I do feel like they probably have some of the best depth, and this is weird to say because it's not traditionally been a spot that we really talk about like this, but it is offensive line. You wrote about, I think you wrote a really good story on just kind of the depth, the people they have there in that room, and why they're so confident in it. So what did you learn about the offensive line, or what are you excited to see when we get into camp here next week?
Yeah, it's a matter of they saw what they needed to see in the playoff, obviously, to feel just extremely excited, almost elated about what this offensive line can be. But we still don't know who's playing the tackles. I think I'm willing to say that Ethan Onyanwa is going to play left tackle and Austin Servel's going to play right tackle. Our Alex Kleitman reported that there could be some flip-flopping there. I think ultimately they'll still land on Onyanwa playing left and Servel playing right, but I could be wrong. And they could be right. Well, one of them will be right because they'll play right tackle. You get it? Okay, there we go. I just had to get that one off there. Just stupid Friday thoughts. But, it's a matter of figuring out who's going to play left tackle, figuring out who's going to play right tackle, and then your depth. Because it's funny to talk about this offensive line depth because they have 4 guys who can play really high level in the interior. But if one of those 4 goes down, that means another one of those 4 has to slide in from tackle, which means somebody else has to play tackle. Who's the somebody else? Is it Phillip Daniels, who, for all the things that we were excited about, I think is a little bit more developmental of a piece than maybe we anticipated just because he started 4 games at Minnesota. I think he is a little bit more developmental, which is why he's being talked about as like a 2026 starter rather than a guy who's going to push Saravel for that starting spot right now. Ian Moore, is he ready? It's year 2. He could be, but that's a tough ask for somebody who played smaller level football in Indiana. For as excited as I still am on him, and I don't think anybody's as excited about Ian Moore than I am. But I think there's reason to believe that he might not be exactly 100% ready. So it's not really what we didn't really ask about it. But I guess the thing I'm trying to get at here is they're so excited about this offensive line, 1 to 5, and really like 1 to 7 because the interchangeable parts. But if those parts have to be interchanged, somebody behind that top 7 has to step in. And that's where you question whether they're going to be ready. Because think back to Josh Simmons getting hurt. Zen Mihalski has to step in. Now, they could have kicked Donovan Jackson out to left tackle immediately and brought in Luke Montgomery. But we didn't really know if Luke Montgomery was completely ready there at Oregon. And so all those pieces had to be interchanged, and then they finally figured it out. Well, there's not going to be a room for finally, maybe a second time. You only get one more finally. And so I'm intrigued as if something does happen on this offensive line, what's the true depth look like, and not just the, hey, 1 to 7 looks really good. Because sometimes you have to interchange, and then it becomes messy.
Yeah, and it's honestly, because this is something you and I talk about when we're just at camps or whatever. Like, it's fun to think about in 2026 when you have Jeremiah Smith coming back for like I don't know if there's been a time more recently where if you have Ian Moore and Philip Daniels, like that could be a very good tackle tandem. Like that, Ohio State's projectable future just hasn't looked that great at tackle in some time. But obviously, it's all about this season and trying to kind of figure out how those pieces fit and gel together. I'm with you that I think it's Austin Cerevel at right tackle and Ethan Oniano at left. And then that interior has just been so strong. I think Carson Hensman probably could have been on a guy that was challenging for the Big Ten preseason honors type of stuff. Could have been a guy that was out there in Vegas. He's going to be a great representative for Ohio State going forward and a great center. And so if we can move off the offensive line, which Spencer wrote again, but one of the first stories he wrote out in Vegas, because everybody wants to talk about it, is the guy that's actually going to be under center. And again, if we go back to things we didn't learn, we did not learn who the starting quarterback was. But we did kind of learn how Ryan Day is pushing the buttons to make this quarterback competition not just a competition for who gets the job, but who's going to be like the man in this offense. And I thought that was fascinating because I think Will Howard set a standard for what they want in that position now, and they're trying to figure out ways to get a quarterback to have that kind of leadership qualities again.
Yeah, there's no way that they're going to replace the leadership of Will Howard, just being honest. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. They're just not. Ryan Day talks about Will Howard like the most important leader maybe Ohio State has had since Ryan Day got there. Like, he just, Will ignited everybody. And I think that's what we didn't learn is like if one of these, whichever of these quarterbacks wins the job, do you have the leadership chops to do what Will Howard did? I don't think they're going to, no matter what, but they're going to have to work toward it. And so I knew going out there, I flew out on Monday. I could have written a story. Hey, we still didn't hear about the quarterback battle enough for today. I could have written it before we even got there. We just weren't going to learn a lot about this quarterback battle. But what we still need to know, I guess that's more nail it down than that, is the leadership angle. And so I want to see that first 2 weeks of camp, like somebody, whether it's Lincoln Keenholz or Julian Sand, just absolutely rip into a receiver who doesn't run the right route, or a running back who misses a pass protection and it's a sack, even though they're not going to be live, or an offensive tackle that just gets destroyed off the ball by Kenyatta Jackson, who gained a lot of buzz out there in Los. I want to see one of these quarterbacks just go nuts. And I think, sometimes that sounds just like performative, or they're doing it and it comes off as being a jerk. But I remember last year, we were out at one of the very first days of camp, and Emeka Egbuka just laid into a couple of guys, just eviscerated a couple of guys who were not doing what they were supposed to. They were having a really sloppy practice, and Emeka just had enough. That's what a leader does. Will Howard would do that sometimes in the huddle or in the locker room. That's what a leader does. I want to see one of these two guys, or both of them maybe, that'd be even better, take that leadership step on the field. And, I don't think that Ryan Day's voicing concern about it, but I don't think it's nothing that Ryan Day keeps bringing up how good of a leader Will Howard was, because he wants those guys to get it through their skulls. You have to be this, because this is what won us a national championship. As great as Justin Fields was, and as great as CJ Stroud was, and as good as, whatever you want to say, I thought he was a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, about Kyle McCord. The leadership style of Will Howard is what won them, and is the one that they won a national championship with. And I think that's what Ryan Day wants moving forward. So we'll still have to be in wait and see mode about the quarterbacks and their leadership style.
Yeah, and I watched the game again recently, because before the first day of Big Ten Media Days, they were playing the Ohio State Penn State game from this past season leading up to it. And you could see the full Will Howard leadership stuff just on display there, bouncing back from the pick six to kind of start it. I don't know how many Ryan Day quarterbacks just have the mental resiliency to kind of bounce back from that in the past, just because they've never really most, whether it's CJ Stroud or Justin Fields or even Kyle McCord, have never really been at a point where it's been that low. You're on your first drive, now you're down 10-0 right away. Will Howard had to go through those moments where they got blown out. He got beat down at Kansas State, and he's kind of been able to bounce back. So I think that's why Ohio, like Ryan Day was very intentional about like, hey, we're trying to like push these guys around. Like we're trying to get Julian Sane and Lincoln Keenholz to like, you gotta punch them around a little bit, see who's gonna bite back, who's gonna punch back. And I think that's kind of what they were doing. And you could see that a little bit when we saw them kind of just getting ready and doing stuff in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center before camps in June. Like they're very clearly making this an intentional thing, not even about throwing the football, like and not even commanding the offense, just how do you command the football team when you guys step on the field? So that's kind of going to be fascinating to see. And then, like you said, it all kind of just culminates here in a couple or next week when we go to camp and get to actually see these guys put on pads and helmets and actually throw the football around against each other. So that's the most fascinating thing. That's when we'll learn what we didn't learn. But still, I thought you learned a lot in Vegas, and obviously there's going to be some fun things to follow here in a week or so.
And we're still going to have more content from our trip out to Las Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. I'm going to get back to writing. Mick's going to go cover recruiting like he always does so well. Alex Flightman having taken some time away this weekend. We hope that he gets rested and recovered for the season. Austin Ward getting some time away this weekend. Hopefully he gets rested and recovered for the weekend, for the next few weeks and into college football season. Berm's over there at LettermenRow.com doing his thing like he always does. We don't have to worry about him. Mick's there as well doing all the recruiting stuff. I'm just Spencer Holbrook covering the team. That's Mick Walker over there. I'm Spencer Holbrook. Go to LettermenRow.com right now. $1 until the Texas game. That's the quarterback battle announcement. That's offensive line information. That's defensive tackle stuff. That's coaching stuff. That is everything you could possibly want from LettermenRow.com. You get it for $1 up until that Texas game. Full coverage of the full month of training camp for just $1 about the Bucks. That's Mick Walker. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys back here at Lettermen Row YouTube channel soon for more breakdowns of the Buckeyes. Probably one a day next week as we ramp up toward training camp. And we'll see you guys over at LettermenRow.com where you can get that coverage for just $1. We'll see you guys over there.